Now that we've played all these different chord progressions, I want to take a moment and walk a student through the same process that I go through as an artist to figure out how to move from, first starting from an intellectual standpoint, from a standpoint of nothingness, basically like, man, I don't know how to approach this song. How am I going to play this? Because there are chord progressions that I will play that have never existed with a harmonica player. So how do we approach a song where we can't go from an imitation model? Because that's the way blues harmonica players learn, right? We imitate all the great solos of our past great harmonica players. So we're very much an oral tradition of listen, copy, and try to use. And if Little Walter hadn't done it, then we're all on our own to figure out how to approach it. We're going to use the Key to the Highway chord changes. Now in this case, Little Walter did do it, but we're going to go ahead and treat it as if it were treat it as if there wasn't a previous example to reference. This is, you can use a jam track also from Walk With Me, which is your tone block study number 1. So go ahead and use that as your jam track instead of doing it with John and I at the moment. The first process is to figure out what the chords are. So if you are able to work with a known song, then you can go ahead and go online or buy a book that actually shows, there's blues fake books out there that would show the chords. If you're working with a musician, so if I'm working with John, I would ask John because he's the direct source. He's, as we've already found, there's many colorations of these chords. So I want to make sure if I'm going to put the time into these chord structures and the relations to them, I want to make sure that I am doing the right chords. Yeah. Otherwise there'll be some surprises on the bandstand. So I would ask John to sit down with me and say, what are these notes of the chord? If I need to, I will figure them out sometimes by simply starting on the root note and then move up to the third, and then if I move up to the fifth, then notice that doesn't match. Maybe that's not a 1 chord, G, B, D, maybe it's actually a 6 chord, E, G, B. So you can move up the chord until you find a note that doesn't match, then you can go down and then experiment with different colorations of the chords that I've shown you so far. But in this case we have it laid out. The first thing to do would be to play the root notes, which is what we have already done with the song, but let's do it again. So our Key to the Highway, we've got the 1 chord, to the 5 chord, to the 4 chord, and then 1, 5, 1, 5. So our 1 chord root note would be 2 draw. Let's play our 1 chord. Then to the 5 chord, our root note is our D, which could be, say, 1 draw or 4 draw. Then to the 4 chord, which could be 1 blow or 4 blow. That's C in this case. And then we get our same chords again in a different order. So let's just play root notes together, Key to the Highway. Why don't you play a turnaround to lead us in?
Okay.
The next step is to do the basic triad, root, third, fifth. Know that the flat 7th or the 6th or the 9th, those are all coloration notes. Everything gets down to the basic triad found in nature. So now John's going to play the same chords. I'm going to focus on just playing the triads. Play our turnaround and we're in.
Okay.
2, 3, 4. Playing example 5.5, you probably already guessed that. And you want to get to the point where you don't have to be looking at something. You want to be able to create these arpeggios on your own. Same thing, I'm going to close my eyes. Go ahead, John. become my focus notes, or our guide tones in this case.
I got a little richer on the chord structure on sometimes, but it didn't really clash with. You stick to roots, thirds, and fifths. It's in there.
Can't go too wrong. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Roots and fifths are going to be the most universal, of course, because whatever colorations that might happen between major and minor and etc., the fifths will always stay strong. The root and the fifth. Our next one, 5.6, talks about passing tones. What are passing tones? They're scale tones. So what I'm basically doing is I'm taking the chord G, B, D and saying, well, what's between G, B, and D? We got G, A, B, C, D, and there's an E in there too if we wanted to go up there. What I'm going to do now is just walk up the same triad, walk up and down, ascending and descending, and I'm adding now the scale tones. So I'm basically filling back in the chord.
Yeah.
Yeah, in this case I'm not including, I didn't want to include the seventh because we're going to go to the flat seventh.
Right.
All right, so 5.6, let's go a little bit slower because I got to go do, 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 one. I'll go ahead and you can give us the turnaround. 1, 2, 3, 1. Now, it sounds a little bit nursery rhymish, but it's a step to show you some notes that can help you give movement into your playing. Now, if we go and add the seventh there, because if the song uses the major sixth, that's going to have a much lighter feel. Well, you can tell this has a little bit of a darker feel to it. It's going to lean a little bit more towards the flat seventh. So now we're going to play 5.7 back to the arpeggio. I'm going to play root third, fifth, flat seventh. Play our turnaround. Example 5.7. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now some notes were dissonant for two reasons. One, the flat seventh is a dissonant note. It is technically an outside tone depending on how you look at it, or an inside tone if you're thinking from the aspect that the guitar is also playing the flat seventh. It also depends on what John is playing, because he's not always just playing a chord structure. He could be playing, for example, each one of my flat sevenths are inhabiting the fourth beat of the bar, which is commonly a place where John will play some transitional notes into the next chord. So just keep in mind that when we're playing more aggressive notes, they're going to be aggressive in some cases.
You use the sixth very much in your playing.
A lot, unless it's minor or very dark, I'll stay away from the sixth.
See, this tune to me has it can go either way,
yeah.
Major or dark, but it seems like that opening, the sixth works really well on the one. It's like if there's a fret, I still got a little bit of the scale, but I'm leaving the flat seven out. Flat seven, although some guys play that, you might hear a seventh chord on top on the guitar, but the melody
wants the sixth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though that seventh's in the chord, probably if you played a big fat, if I played a big fat seventh chord like this, it probably wouldn't sound as good, but since it's played in the upper register, it sounds nicer. It has a better blend.
So let's call what we just did example 5.7A. I'll now do 5.7B, and I'm going to play major sixth chords instead of the seventh chords now. All right. Play our turnaround and...
Beautiful. It sounds
Much
good.
better.
Sounds good, and it gives it it's just a little bit different color.